back to Sprague Homestead. So today we're going to talk about 10 things you should know before deciding to bring home an LGD. So let's talk about the bad stuff that everybody's used to first. So you've probably heard some of these. LGDs tend to be big barkers, and this is absolutely the truth. Their first line of defense is to make their presence known. So they are kind of big barkers. Until they're age 2, they will bark for absolutely no reason, unfortunately, and oftentimes all night long. So you need to know, especially if you're on small acreage or have a lot of neighbors, that the barking is just something you're going to have to deal with. It can be trained out a little bit, but it is, like I said, their first line of defense. So that is what they're going to do. If they think there's a threat at all, they're going to bark. The second thing you'll probably hear is that they will dig. Now, we've had 6 of these guys over the last few years, and this seems to be something that runs about 50-50. We currently have 2 really big diggers on the farm, one to the point where he will dig himself clean out. The other one just tends to be digging after gophers and things and will sometimes dig underneath the fence. She doesn't get out, but we have had goats go out the dog holes. So is digging an issue? Yes, it can be. Another thing to be aware of is that these guys can climb. When you're talking about a 100-pound dog that stands, you know, almost to your waist, that's a very big dog. And when you're asking them to guard things, you know, they'll kind of go where they think the danger is. So a 48-inch fence, a 4-foot fence, not a big obstacle. It'll stop most dogs, and if you've got them really well trained, it'll, you know, most of them will, okay, that's it, that's where my boundaries are. Again, we have 2 that doesn't work for. Doesn't matter how much training we've put in, they know they're not supposed to go out. If they are following a scent, a predator, something they're concerned about, they're going for it, whether we tell them to or not. So you need to know that going in, that a 48-inch fence may not be enough. I've seen some people say that a 5-foot fence will slow them down. We have a female that can climb 7 feet, so that's not going to stop her. You may have to look at putting a hot wire or something along the top of the fence to see if that'll slow them down. So another thing that Pyrenees especially, but really all of your LGD breeds are known for is roaming. The way these guys were developed is to guard a set of animals, and whatever they saw was where they kept the predators at bay. So what you tend to get, there's a breeder, and I can't recall who it was that said this, but he said in several of his books and videos, when he talked about the Pyrenees especially, the Pyrenees is king of all he beholds. And this is actually pretty true. Most of them will consider anything they see to be their territory. That's where they protect. So if you're putting them on small acreage, know that not only are they probably thinking that they're going to protect their property, but also your neighbor's property and the entire neighborhood property, because if they can see the threat, it's a threat. Another thing to know about these guys is they are very, very, very stubborn. The breeds were created, pretty much all of your LGD breeds were created to pretty much operate with minimal human interaction. That meant that a shepherd could leave a dog in charge of a flock and go do other things without worrying about predators. Because of that, they tend to be very independent-minded and very stubborn. Until they're about the age of 2, they decide that they are actually in charge. And so you play this kind of battle of wills with basically 100+ pounds of teenager. So another thing to know about these guys is they are most active at night. That doesn't mean that they're not active during the day, obviously, but they are mostly active at night. Why is that? It's because most of the predators come out at night. You can kind of mitigate this a little bit by keeping them in a barn, anything that's kind of secure so that they don't feel like they have to be on guard all the time. But generally, they're going to bark the most at night. They're going to be the most active at night. And so do keep that in mind. Again, if you live in a small area or have neighbors, they are more likely to be noisy and things at night, because at night they're going more off of what they can hear and less off of what they can see. So again, natural instinct is you bark first. So if they can't see it, but they can hear it, or they think they smell it, they're going to bark at it. All right, so another thing to consider before you bring home an LGD, they're big. They are very big. With the exception of our little Dynamite here, Skatey, that's only about 50, 60 pounds, these guys tend to be pretty big. Even your, some of your smaller dogs, kind of like some of your smaller Pyrenees, you're still going to be looking at probably 80 pounds for a female. They eat a lot. Of course, we do have kind of big, big LGDs. Most of ours are over 100 pounds, but they do eat a lot. We go through, on average, for the main 4, because our older boy out back is actually on a senior dog food, but the main 4, so we've got 150, 100, about 130, and little 60 pounder there. We go through 4 pounds of dog food a day. So on average, we're going through a pound of dog a day, because little Miss Dynamite will eat almost as much as this one. So that's definitely something to consider, is that, you know, you're going to have, one, a good quality dog food, and be prepared to go through a lot of it. So another thing that everybody thinks when they get these LGDs is, well, they're naturally trained. They have natural instinct. And to a point, that is absolutely true. By the time they're 2 and actually trained up, you should be able to confidently leave them out in the field to watch the stock and not have to worry about it too much. However, that does not mean that they don't need training. And this is something that we're really struggling with Champy, who is a newer dog, where she just didn't have adequate training. So she doesn't come. She does sit if you can actually get her attention, but she's really missing out on all that. If you get one of these guys as a puppy, you've still got to do all the basic training, and that means the sit, the stay, the come, the leash work, all that, because you want to do it before they're this size. Because trust me, I'm trying to train this 100-pound dog now that can darn near pull my arm out of my socket. So you've still got to train him. You've still got to train him to listen to commands like, no. She doesn't always listen to that. But there's still commands that's got to be, you know, trained. And don't think that because you've had another dog, you know, if you've raised labs, guess what? It does not always translate. These guys have a totally different mindset. So if you've trained other dogs before, you might find yourself totally unprepared to train these guys. Because most dogs, right out of the gate as puppies, they're babies, right? So they bond to you, they listen to the things that you're doing. These guys, by 3 months old, are so independent, you are already battling the teenage mindset in a little tiny body. And that you better believe that it is totally a different experience than training any other breed of dog. Alright, so I've mentioned this several times throughout this, but let me just reiterate it again, that these guys are not mature until about age 2. Of course, just like anything, there's a window in there. Shy was pretty much matured out at 18 months as far as overall temperament. Skatey's almost 3 and still has really bad puppy behaviors. Champy behind me is almost 2. She's just over a 1.5 years. And she thinks she is absolutely in charge and the biggest teenager ever. Why is this so important? Well, it's not just about the training mentality. But because they are so slow to mature, you have to watch out for puppy behavior. Now, a dog like Champy, and this is another thing we're fighting with her, at 100 pounds, we raise Nigerian dwarf goats along with some other breeds. And when she wants to play and the big dog doesn't want to play, she goes and plays with the goats. Because these guys bond to goats and think of them as family, right? So what do you do with your family when you're a teenager? You kind of play and pick on them and things like that. So until they're about age 2, and it really does seem like a light bulb moment. We've seen this now in several of them, where they hit about 2, 2.5, and it's like the light comes on and they go, wait, I don't play with these, I protect these. It's a different mindset. And it's something that you really have to be cautious of. Until they're about age 2, you really don't want to leave them with livestock by themselves. They just get themselves into trouble. The other thing is, even a dog at Champy's size, at 100 pounds, she is not mentally mature enough to fight off predators. And we've seen this now several times when we've actually had stuff come up to the fence. Will she follow her nose and have good instinct when we've had coyotes come up? Absolutely, she's got great instinct, but when actually presented with a threat, she looks to shy because she really doesn't understand yet what she's supposed to do. She's basically just a kid. It's kind of like, and this is kind of an extreme example, but it's like taking a teenager and putting them into a war terrorist type situation. even if they're old enough to pull the trigger on a gun, that doesn't mean they understand the repercussions or when it's actually appropriate. So these guys, I always advocate, if you can, have an older dog with a younger dog. If you can't, be prepared for the fact that you're going to have to be that mentor, and that they really do not need to be left unsupervised until age 2. So the last thing to know about LGDs, and this goes for every breed again, boredom absolutely is the enemy. These guys can be kind of busy in nature. If they've got a big enough area and a big enough flock to protect, you'll see them making rounds several times a day oftentimes. They'll nap a lot during the day. But especially when they're younger dogs, and I mean up to about age 5, Shy has kind of turned that corner where she's not as busy-bodied, but until about age 5, they really are, they've got to have something to do, right? So even if they're guarding the flock on a nice day and there's not much happening, they will get themselves into trouble. Now this is where we get those kind of behaviors like digging, picking on the other livestock. They also don't do very well with toys. We've bought toys over the years, especially for one of our males that has a tendency to go over fences and things like that. Doesn't really work. So you have to know that going in, that chances are, if they are doing a lot of destructive behavior, they're just bored. You can do a couple of things by like mixing up the paddocks that they're working. We like to move our girls around so they're working with different animals. You can give them sticks. Our big male likes what I call logs. He likes them about 6 feet long because he is about a 150-pound dog, so he likes the biggest sticks he can find. Little Miss Dynamite here, Skatey, will just chew on sagebrush or any old thing. If you've got stuff that they can do, things to chew on, it'll kind of mitigate and kind of curb those destructive behaviors. So those are our 10 things that you probably need to know before you take the plunge into getting LGDs. If you have other questions, leave them down in the comments. I will be sure to get back to you. These guys really are great dogs, but you just have to know there's a lot of things that go into it. And I guess that's it today from Sprague Homestead. Happy homesteading!